Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, we have a fun one. We are doing our NFL Power Rankings. Now, looking at the bottom couple of teams here, they've gotten off to some slow starts, but that's not to say that they can't come and recover and still have a nice season. However, a couple of these teams have definitely kind of struggled right out of the gate. Now, number 32 for me is Carolina. Definitely have had their fair share of struggles offensively and defensively. This is a team that is, potentially going to be going through a coaching change mid-season. I would not be completely surprised. They need to see some better play out of Baker Mayfield. This roster has a ways to go before they're in that, contention conversation. Carolina here, followed by the Atlanta Falcons, and the Falcons are once again a team that is in limbo. They're in rebuild mode. They definitely have some nice offensive pieces: Cordero Patterson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, but they need to put it all together. They need to string together some more drives. They definitely have to get Kyle Pitts going. So them at 31 definitely to me seems pretty reasonable. At number 30, we have the Houston Texans. Houston Texans, they tied that game against the Colts, but I definitely think that this is a team that you have to consider as, talent deficient on the roster. And I think that's pretty fair to say. This is a team that's got a long ways to go. I'm not a huge Lovie Smith guy, so I definitely think that this team is deserving to be here at 30. Next, we have the Chicago Bears. Now, the Chicago Bears are a roster that, once again, Ryan Poles is kind of shaping it in his image. He's trying a couple of different things, got some nice bargain free agents, also kind of seeing what these draft picks can do for him. However, they need to be throwing the ball a little bit more with Justin Fields. They need to continue to work on the development of his passing game. But here, at 29 is a very reasonable spot. At number 28, we have the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle was able to pick up a very nice and pleasantly surprising win earlier, this season. But I kind of look at them as a team that's going to be struggling. When you look at the quarterback play, they're going to need to see a ton out of Geno Smith to really propel them up these rankings. Once again, this is a rebuilding roster, and that's kind of a common theme here for some of these bottom teams. But a team that doesn't really kind of fit the criteria of what we've seen so far is the Indianapolis Colts, a team that was hoping to really contend this season, but they just have gone the wrong way. I think Indianapolis is in a position where they wanted to see themselves in the postseason. They went out, traded for an established quarterback in Matt Ryan. It has not played in their favor. He has not played well. And this is a team that is definitely behind expectations for sure. Now at 26, we have Jacksonville. Jacksonville was able to shut them out when the Colts came to town, and that's why you see the slight edge there. Jacksonville looked very, very good in that game. The defense was great. Their offense was clicking pretty efficiently. Trevor Lawrence had an efficient day. I think that when you look at Jacksonville, they have made some strides. Generally, they're 32 or 31 of these rankings, but they get a nice boost. It's good for Jags fans to not be at the very bottom. 25 now, we have the New York Jets go out and get a nice surprising win against Cleveland. So I see them being here. I think it makes a lot of sense if you're looking at what the Jets are able to do, what they've improved on in the offseason. Garrett Wilson is paying off huge for this New York Jets team. Joe Douglas did a terrific job with the draft. Garrett Wilson is the latest example of that. 24, we have the Washington Commanders, and Washington, what version of Carson Wentz is a guy going to get? We really don't know, but he's top 5 in passing yards. This is a guy that's trying to click. He's got some weapons around him. Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, a really, really good receiving core. They also, they've done a pretty good job under Ron Rivera here, trying to, continue to sail really. So once again, I have them here at 24. 23, we have the Tennessee Titans. Now, some people may say, oh, well, they don't have a win yet. How can they be this high? But, part of this is I'm factoring, how good is their roster? Where should they be? I mean, they should even be higher based off of, where they've been the last couple of seasons, but definitely some big changes with the AJ Brown trade in the offseason. Traylon Burks is going to be a guy that is going to see some more targets moving forward this season, and you will see a big impact on their game plan with Traylon Burks. So I like Tennessee here. 22, I have the Raiders, and they definitely could have been shifted up the rankings had they been able to close that game against Arizona. Very tough ending to that one, but I think it's fair to say that the Raiders should be improving. I have some concerns about that offensive line, but I think this is very reasonable here. And now we look at 21 and the last of this kind of tier with the Dallas Cowboys. They're down Dak Prescott. Can Cooper Rush be a guy that is able to keep them afloat, until Dak gets back? That's a great question. Had a very tough, hard fought win against Cincinnati at home. So big deal for Dallas there. They stay, relatively high in the rankings, but it's very possible they drop down if we start seeing some slip ups in Cooper Rush's game. Now we can jump to that next tier, and we're going with a team that's undefeated thus far. That's the New York Giants. A lot of credit to the New York Giants. I'm not as big of a believer in their offense as some people. However, I'm not as low as other people. So the Giants are a tough one because we know more or less, where they've been the last couple of seasons. They've been towards the bottom, but Brian Dable has made some big strides with this offense. A ton of credit for his creativity, his leadership, and having them at 20 is not a disservice, I don't think, considering how far they've come. Once again, they can still move up these rankings as they continue to prove themselves. And then next we have the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it's kind of difficult here. This is being recorded at the time of the Browns Steelers game. I think Pittsburgh has some fundamental issues with TJ Watt being down. It's going to be tough. Mitch Trubisky needs to, definitely pick up his play. That's why I got them, at this point at 19. Mike Tomlin does a really good job with his rosters, regardless of what he has talent-wise. But right now, I got Pittsburgh at 19, followed by 18 here. We have the Detroit Lions. And Detroit, this is the highest we've had them in years, just considering, the culture that Dan Campbell has brought to this team. The ability to put up big points. Their offense is looking phenomenal right now. Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, Jared Goff is clicking on all cylinders. I think you got to give the Lions a ton of credit. At 17, we have the New England Patriots. The New England Patriots, the Patriot way, very well was in that position where I almost put Detroit a little higher. But I give New England credit with being somewhat talent deficient on their roster. They continue to win games, and a lot of that is a true testament to what Bill Belichick brings to the table. So New England here, hopefully they can, get healthy. But New England's a team that's definitely in a transitional phase as well. Number 16 here, we have the Cleveland Browns, and the Cleveland Browns are very, very loaded on their roster. They're just waiting for Deshaun to get back from suspension, but maybe Jacoby Brissett can carry them just enough. I can't wait to see the results of the Browns Steelers game to see, how this really shakes up. And that very well could change these rankings dependent upon that. So looking at those two, I think that, Cleveland in a tough competitive AFC North, they have the roster that definitely stacks pretty well. The next one here, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and a lot of people are going to question why are this high? They haven't won a game. Well, I look at holistically at what the roster is and where they should be by the end of the season. I definitely feel they're a top 10 team. However, their offensive line has been atrocious. It's very hard to justify putting them any higher than this or any lower. I think this is kind of where they should even out with all things considered. Now 14, we have the Arizona Cardinals picked up a big win against the Raiders. Kyler Murray made some big time plays. Cardinals are a very tough team to pinpoint. They can get really explosive offensively and defensively. There's still some concerns I have. However, Arizona here at 14, followed by a team that is absolutely stout on the defensive end, and that is the New Orleans Saints. Just so good. All three levels of that defense, they do a great job playing good team defense, good contain, and they gave Tom Brady fits in the game that they had played against them. For the most part. So New Orleans is a tough nut to crack when you're considering, what they have. At number 12, we have the Denver Broncos. And, had there been better clock management, maybe they're higher on this list. Nathaniel Hackett's been a big conversation piece in his clock management, and it's made a lot of people frustrated with their decision at the end of the game to not, attempt to pick up that first down and then make it a much more manageable kick. Now at 11, we have the San Francisco 49ers. No Trey Lance, it's Jimmy Garoppolo. So good thing they held on to him because he was that true insurance policy that they needed moving forward. This is a guy that they can win with. They have a stout defensive line. Once again, I do believe, despite them being riddled with injuries here with Mitchell down and also Trey Lance down, this is a team that's competitive, they're tough, and they know how to win games. So I think that's totally warranted here. Now we're going to kind of get into that next tier. When you look at number 10, I think Green Bay, Green Bay was able to bounce back nicely. They did a good job in that Chicago game, controlling tempo, running the ball effectively. And that's, to me, a good balance of them becoming a top 10 team. People were writing them off right away after the week one. I wanted to slow down on that a little bit because that's not, more or less, that is not the team that they truly are. At number 9, we look at the Minnesota Vikings, and a team that had a very good week one against Green Bay. And then all of a sudden they look like a completely different team against Philadelphia. I think they fall kind of in the middle because they look like true contenders week one. Week two, they were super uncompetitive in basically every facet of the game. Kirk Cousins struggled mightily. The offensive line struggled. Defensively, they couldn't stop anything. So looking at the Minnesota Vikings, I think they kind of balance out. I think they're, borderline top 10 team. I do believe it's justified for them being this high still. Number 8, we had the Baltimore Ravens, and Baltimore, despite that collapse, that we might be talking about them in a different regard had that not happened. But I think of where Rashad Bateman's development has taken them. They have a guy that's a true number one. I firmly believe that in this league, Rashad Bateman is starting to develop into that guy. High praise for Bateman. However, with Dobbins eventually coming back here and becoming healthy, I think Baltimore can be super, super scary on the ground once again. Number 7, we have the Miami Dolphins. A lot of credit to Miami because them coming back in that game, Tua has looked unbelievable in that one. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle. You can't talk about the Dolphins without talking about Mike McDaniel and the job he's done with this organization. Hopefully they can keep up that, that good mojo. Number 6, we have the LA Chargers. Now, the Chargers, once again, are a team that is super impressive on paper. They look good in game. They had a terrific game against Kansas City for the most part. Good game plan put together there by Lombardi, but I think that the Chargers are super talented. I even debated moving them up a little bit higher. Justin Herbert's rib injury is definitely going to play a factor into their next couple of weeks. So we'll have to see if they're able to maintain while he's, adjusting accordingly and getting healthier. Number 5 is a team that's had a lot of controversy the whole offseason. That's Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, was able to pull out the win in New Orleans. Tom Brady, once again, like I had alluded to earlier, struggles mightily against New Orleans, but I think that they still are a top 5 team. Great run defense, a team that can be opportunistic on defense. At 5, to me, is totally justifiable. At number 4, we have the LA Rams. And I kind of look at the Rams as a team that, it's tough to stop Cooper Kupp in any capacity. Cam Akers needs to get healthy. Darrell Henderson is effective number 2 running back, which he's having to kind of serve somewhat of the RB1. Cam Akers are trying to work him back slowly. And despite him being, number 1 in carries, that might not be the case on a week-to-week basis. But this team still has Aaron Donald in the middle of that defense, on middle of that defensive line. He is an absolute beast for that front. Number 3, we have Kansas City, and Kansas City is in a position here where, a lot of people underrate Kansas City every year, despite them being so good consistently. Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, they have a great thing going. I kind of look at it as people are thinking that, this offense was going to be bad without Tyreek Hill, and that's been the furthest thing from the truth. Kansas City is a good team, good competitive roster, some good defensive pieces. They're right back in contention. And now it comes down to 2-1. A lot of people don't like Philly as much as I do. I have them all the way up here at number 2. When you look at their defensive front, the pressures they've been able to generate, their offensive output they've been able to have with Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, great connection. Devontae Smith came alive week 2 and absolutely torched the Vikings. I think Philadelphia is legit. I think more people need to be talking about them. And now finally, number 1 has been a lot of people's number 1. It's Buffalo with their ability to absolutely blow teams out of the water on prime time against good teams, bad teams. It doesn't really matter. Buffalo doesn't play down to competition, and they rise up when they're playing against really good teams. So that is my number 1 team. Thanks again for stopping by. Appreciate you watching the video. Hit that subscribe button if you are new. Also, leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the content. Had a lot of fun making it, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about my power rankings.